in Neverstad. We love a good story, don't we? Yes, we do, don't we? Yes, we do. We love a good story. And we can't get our stories to be scary enough, can we?
Not changed with the blue eyes, and they were bright and full of hatred. And when he looked at them, he knew that he could not do anything against them. She came over to him, and she held out the spindle with the wool on it, and the wool unravelled from the spindle, and it wrapped itself round his feet.
When we're in that area all the time, I've always felt really uncomfortable there. And there is also another figure, and I don't know if it's the same one or not, but that marches right through and goes right through the glass that's behind, through the room where I do a monthly storytelling evening on the second Tuesday of every month, incidentally. Sorry, there's an advert there.
Quick
Sorry.
plug. Have we died and gone to America?
Well, story is life. Story is everywhere. And the storyteller acts as the bridge between the story and the wider community. Without the audience, there is no story. We hope that festivals like the York Festival of Storytelling engages that wider community.
Just then, yes, she heard the scampering of hundreds and hundreds of tiny, tiny little feet as her feet were scampering. And there she saw them sitting in front of her, rats. Dozens and dozens of rats. Tiny ones, big ones, cute ones, scary ones, all looking at her with their beady little rat eyes and their little sharp ratty claws and their little sharp ratty teeth. And they were munching up the curry noodles. Let's see, we're munching up the curry noodles. Brilliant, thank you, rats. Mr. Froggy was right. But then the rats were looking. Oh, the rats were singing a song, weren't they? Yes, the rats were singing a song. And you can all sing this together because you're all the rats, aren't you? Rats, rats, everywhere. So many rats, there's rats to spare. Nobody likes us, we don't care, because we like eating noodles. Okay, sing along. 1, 2, 3, 4, rats, rats, everywhere. So many rats, there's rats to spare. Nobody likes us, we don't care, because we like eating noodles.
Так, на час тут раз. Ну, приятно. Пелака. Далее, сейчас тут раз. Ну, приятно. Once upon a time, we believed in India that Bhumi Devi, goddess Mother Earth, had a son, Naraka. She was Bhumi Devi, Mother Earth, and like any other mother, she loved her son with so much affection. Motherly love was poured and poured like an endless flow of a river. But this son, Naraka, possessed the natures of a demon. not a Asura. He called himself Asura, a demon. And he looted and plundered and raided. He looted and plundered and he raided. He looted and he plundered and he raided everything.
The Gruffalo by Julia Donaldson. A mouse took a stroll through the deep, dark wood. A fox saw the mouse, and the mouse looked good. "Where are you going to, little brown mouse? Come and have lunch in my underground house." "It's terribly kind of you, fox, but no, I'm going to have lunch with a Gruffalo." "A Gruffalo? What's a Gruffalo?"
Hid herself completely. She hid herself in a cloak. She covered her head with a hood and she covered her body with a cloak. And all you could see were her little silver feet shining light. And she went down onto the cars, onto the bogs, and she took her first steps on the bogs. And she trod very, very lightly on the tussocks, and she could feel them quivering between her toes, and she could feel that her balance was very precarious, but she walked light as light over that bog. And they were talking, they were hearing those strange noises, and every time the lapwing cried across the bogs, they thought it was some horrible thing coming to get them, and every rustle they all jumped. When one man said, "I reckon I know where the moon is." Only I was so amazed at the time, it didn't occur to me.
Well, I first got into storytelling probably as a child because it was something that was still part of my background to some extent. My granny would have told us the stock of family stories, and my dad would have made up stories for us rather than reading them quite often. And I think then I forgot about it for about 20 years, but it's something that's really coming back in because people are realising the difference between a told and a read story. And there's something about that alchemy that happens when a storyteller is in the room with the people who are listening. And the storyteller doesn't just quite make the story by themselves. The story is made in the space between the teller and the listener, I think. And I think that's something that once people experience it, they want to find out what's happening there, and they feel it's something they might be able to do themselves.
Stop there! A necklace, you say?
Yes, the pearl on a rusty chain.
And where did she go, this slinky cat?
Well, I think up the stairs. Yes, probably that.
Okay, now I helped you build your tables, so can you help me?
Okay, since you built my table so beautifully.
Why do you think she wanted my necklace?
Who knows, maybe she is just reckless.
Oh, Spider, that answer was useless.
Ah, mon petit, you are proving to be a nuisance. Now, get out of my restaurant. You've been here long enough. Follow the staircase, there you will find old McGruff. He will know where the cat went. Tell him Spider sent you. Good luck from me, and good luck, young child, on your journey.
Bon voyage, monsieur.
Au revoir, yes.
This is my favourite ghost story because there was once a boy and a girl, and they lived around about Victorian times, I believe, at a time when people were very interested in seances and ghosts and the idea of the world beyond. And these two children made a pact that whichever one of them died first, they would come back as a ghost and visit the other. Now they grew up, they forgot all about this pact that they'd made. The boy, he went to fight in the Navy for his country, and the girl, she had a keen interest in history, so she came to visit York, and while she was there, she walked around the Minster with a touring party. And as she was looking and admiring things, she suddenly noticed a man some distance away, and the guide highlighted her attention and said, "Look, I wonder what he is doing so far from sea." And as she looked, the woman's expression changed to pure horror. This man came closer and closer towards her until he bent forward and he said, barely a whisper, "There is a future state." And then he turned and he walked away. By now the woman was visibly distressed. The tour guide tried to calm her down. He asked her what was the matter, and she said she had just seen her brother and he couldn't possibly have been there because he was away fighting for his country. And the man she had seen was wearing a naval uniform, and the only conclusion that she could draw was that she had seen a spirit. And sure enough, word came to the lady just 2 days later that her brother had been killed at sea, but he had returned to keep his promise and to tell her that there is a future state.
You go in the dressing rooms and there's 4 mirrors with lights round, and that's where you put on your slap. Well, actors are very precious about the gear, and they put all the stuff out ready, and nobody's allowed near that mirror but them. That's my mirror, you're not having it. And they're all sort of like that, spread out in each of the dressing room, except the one with the nun in it. And where it used to be the hospitium, and there was nuns working here, that is now one of the dressing rooms. And they go in, and actors and actresses who've never worked in York before and don't know any of the stories or anything like that, they go in that particular dressing room, and they're all crowded around the one mirror at one end. And they say, "What are you doing? What's wrong? Why are you out of the mirrors?" And they go, "Don't know, just don't like it." And this happens time and time again. And this is the nun who messed about with a local fella and was discovered to be pregnant, and she was punished by being walled up alive. And even though those walls are long gone, you still can feel her terrible icy presence. And people say late at night they hear her screaming. Being a storyteller, it's all about belief. When you look at your audience and they're lost in the moment, and whatever age they are, and you look in the faces and they're 3 again, that's the magic of it all. When you're lost in, just for that time, believing in whatever it's all about and lost in the story. As a storyteller, it's not about learning a story, it's about knowing the story, finding a story you love and knowing it and thinking about all the most important parts of it. And when you've thought about all the most important parts of a story you love, anybody can be a storyteller. It's an oral tradition. It's about us listening to each other and sharing with each other. And it goes back timelessly as we sit at the universal fire and we tell our stories. There's that old tradition of keeping the stories alive, yes, but of that travelling storyteller coming from the other village or another tribe and coming and joining you and telling them much the same story but in their own way. And if you get the important bits of the story that it won't work without, and then let it flow, you're a storyteller. I better crack on.